Hello everyone, welcome to my review of Season 3, Episode 6 of The Flash, titled Shade. Before I go any further, I just want to say there will be spoilers in this review. So, in this episode, we get a lot of progression when it comes to the main villain of the season, Alchemy. But before I get to that, we had a few interesting character developments within Team Flash. The biggest one, and one of the most surprising ones, I guess for me a little bit, was Caitlin finally reveals her Killer Frost powers to the rest of the team. Well, initially she reveals it to Cisco, who ends up revealing it to the rest of the team. It's interesting because this was something she really wanted to keep secret still, even though she told Cisco and Cisco responded to it in a decent manner. Granted, it is something that they were very much taken aback by because they didn't expect Caitlin to have these powers, because the Caitlin that we knew in the other timeline and even in the Flashpoint timeline did not have powers at all. So this is once again a result of Barry screwing with the timelines, and he has to once again take this burden on himself that he has screwed something up when it comes to someone that he cares about. He also needs to come clean in this episode when it comes to what happened to Wally West in the Flashpoint timeline. The Wally West in that time was heavily injured and probably was going to die. So he has to reveal this to Joe and Iris and Wally, because Wally is insanely desperate when it comes to wanting to become a speedster. He is desperate to have these speed powers. And in this episode, I think that's more apparent than even before. He is insanely jealous of all these people around him getting powers, and now Caitlin also has powers as well, so he's feeling very much left out, very much ostracized from the rest of the group, and he is starting to hear the voices in his head from Alchemy, the same voices that Magenta heard and probably the other people heard as well. Joe is becoming very wary of that, as well as Barry, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for him to resist the call to Alchemy. So they decide they are going to utilize this as a way to form a trap to catch Alchemy, and it kind of works there for a little bit, and then there is a huge twist at the end where Savitar appears. Savitar, who claims to be the god of speed. Savitar, for those of you who are familiar with the Flash comic books, he is part of the Flash's Rogues Gallery, as a lot of the villains are. But those events happen at the end of the episode. I'm going to backtrack a little bit here and talk about Cisco and Caitlin, because Cisco vibes Caitlin to see if she does in fact become the evil Killer Frost that they knew from the Earth 2 timeline, and what he sees is kind of murky. He sees Caitlin and himself fighting each other using their abilities, and they interpret this as Caitlin is eventually going to become a villain. And this is something that heavily weighs on her mentally because she doesn't want to become a villain. And as we saw in the previous episodes, she's taking steps towards that. She's becoming rather cold, rather evil, rather sadistic, kind of losing a sense of herself. And I'm curious if that's going to progress further, because the next episode, episode 7, is indeed titled Killer Frost, which was an episode I thought that they would have the big reveal of Caitlin and her powers. But no, they did it in this episode, I guess, as kind of prep work or framework for the subsequent episode. So I'm very curious to see where that's going to go. This is probably one of my favorite storylines of this season, because I kind of always wanted to see what would happen if our Caitlin Snow developed these Killer Frost powers, how she would react, what would be her development, would she indeed go evil, and we are finally getting that this season. Unfortunately, one of the negative aspects of this episode, and it's kind of becoming a trend this season for some reason, is we're getting just these kind of throwaway villains. In this episode, it's a villain called Shade, who's kind of there just to be a villain within the plot, but the real villain of the episode, and the one they should be concentrating on, is Alchemy, but the Shade villain is just there to kind of stir up problems. He shows up and he is creating all kinds of havoc, and the way they kind of defeat him is kind of obvious, just shine a bunch of light on him and that will reduce his powers down to nothing, and we see that he's kind of just some no one who kind of has these powers. I'm assuming he probably got these powers from alchemy, so there's a little connection there, but yet again, it's just kind of a plot device that is keep recurring in this season. But despite that kind of problem with the episode, I'll overall say it was a good episode of The Flash. It left off on a cliffhanger that had me go, wow, I can't really wait till the next episode. I wish it was happening now. I'm really curious where the next episode picks up, because this episode ends on quite the cliffhanger. But I do like the progression when it came to Wally as well as Caitlin. I am really curious to see where that goes. As we saw in this episode, Wally is now in some type of cocoon. Who knows, is he finally going to get his powers? Are these powers going to manipulate his character in the sense that is it going to make him evil? Is he going to stay the same Wally? Who really knows until the next episode, of course. But with all that being said, this has been my review of Season 3, Episode 6 of The Flash, titled Shade. If you like this video, please check out my other episode reviews for the other comic book related television series.